guys, today we are talking about our DM notebooks. There are 4 of them and I can't wait to share them with you. Again, this is going to be a very self-promotional video. Anything you can find in this video, you can buy in the shop at cantripsmedia.com. If you're not able to support me in that way, don't forget, we now have memberships for the channel. I just adjusted it a little bit and I'll probably continue to tweak them as we go. I'll put a link to any of the products down below. So any of these ways are great ways to support me and help me keep this channel going and help me continue to be a nerd for a living. So I thank you even just for watching this to the end. I'm trying to cut it down as short as possible. This one in particular is talking about the one I made for me as a DM. It's my baby. I definitely get a little long-winded. Let's just dive right in. All right, let's talk about my baby. This is the one I made for me. Then my husband was like, you should sell these because somebody else might need these too. And I made this for myself because I was having a hard time tracking my campaign. It was like the first one I ever really ran, and it was so hard to keep track of everything from lore to like NPCs. And I also wanted to develop my own campaign. So really this is meant for homebrew, but I ended up using it to run things like Hoard of the Dragon Queen. I'm using a similar one for my Pathfinder game where I'm running Abomination Vaults because I was able to write it down and then I can pull out the information I need for that session and then put it all back in one place like a big binder. So this is the DM version. This guy is different because it includes a little bit of everything. I have 3 other journals, you can kind of see them on the side here, that kind of take things that are in this journal and make it more specialized. So if you're looking for something in particular, there is a journal probably for that. The other different thing about the Dungeon Master one is that it comes with these tab stickers. So it comes with one of these. So it comes with the already labeled sections as well as just some general like D20s and exclamation points, etc. This guy is the only one that comes with stickers because this is like my baby and I felt like it really does help to flip to the different pages. This is where we'll start with the world building. So I kind of separate everything into stuff that makes sense to me. So I started bigger and went smaller. You can also do the opposite if you start in the back section of this and then you would move up. But this first section is for just the world in general. So anything from your general astronomy, your general races, is magic prevalent in this world, that kind of thing. There's a map here. The other thing that this section has is a whole part for just a general world timeline, major events that happen throughout your campaign. Like, I don't know, in Critical Role, they have the calamity or whatever. So you have a whole section to detail the world events. And then you have the Pantheon. I built this part specifically with the idea that you don't need a lot to run your campaign. You can get sucked into world building and you can build and build and build and make so many different pantheons and so many different gods do this and a god for that. And you really don't need that. Instead, what you really need to focus on is the different pantheons for the different cleric types, right? So you need a life cleric, a death cleric, you need a knowledge domain, you need those deities. That means you need essentially 8, okay? So in here, I include room for 8 major deities, and most of these pages, I should add, have a little like tag on the bottom. If you're ever reaching out to me and you're like, how do I get more of these pages? Tell me what the tag is on the bottom. This will help, me tell you which page pack it's in, but you can also probably put this into the website if the website is cooperating and I built it right, then you can find it that way too. There are only 8 of the major deities, and then I include a couple pages of just like minor deities. I was thinking things like, technically the kobolds have a god, so you might want to put those details in here. The other thing I included on these is specific sections to help just
keep certain things straight, like your deity might have different forms and manifestations. What kind of relationship do they have with other deities? Do they have religious ranks or groups? Is there like a cult associated with them? Do they have other names, symbols, like just some of that general stuff? So you're not flipping or going to Google and looking up, what is Sarenrae the god of? Or that's Pathfinder, isn't it? Well, I guess it's D&D too if you're in older D&D. You don't have to do all of that. After the Pantheon, we get into regional sections. So I include a regional map. So again, that hex grid, because that's better for long distances. And then you have a very similar setup to that world section, but this is just tailored to specific regions. So I'm thinking like continent size, right? Instead of the entire world. You get 3 of these sections in the Lorekeeper, so you have a lot more room to work with. I think in this one I only put 1 with a bunch of different cities in it. But again, it says region on the bottom. So your region might have a specific timeline, and there's a lot of blank pages in here. One, it separates the sections for you, but also it gives you a little bit of extra room. And I designed these to work more with the note-taking and the way that I take notes. I tend to prep my sessions on this side and then add any notation on the right side. This is almost like scratch paper to me. But we'll go over that more when we hit the session section. Once you go through all of the region stuff, you get to the cities, which there are, I believe, 2 or 3 cities in here. I'd have to double check. But you have a map section, and then you have different prompts here. Now everything is a little bit different because your city will be more specialized, right? You're gonna have a section for your major groups and guilds. What's some of their culture, history? What's their legal system? What's their economy? What trade goods do they have? Are there any major landmarks? And then here is like major shops and inns. That way, at a glance, you can be like, okay, we're visiting this city. These are the taverns that you have to choose from tonight. This other side is more about infrastructure, education, public centers like theaters or service centers or something. And then any major holidays and festivals, and then a little blank box so you can put whatever you want in there. Then you have a section for your taverns, your inns, including a little table where you can write the items down. Honestly, sometimes it can get a little squishy here if you have a big description. So me personally, I try to just write the major thing here. And then I use item cards like this, which I also sell. I sell mini notebooks. I will actually write all that information on here. Then I just hand that out to my players, and they can actually pop it right into their notebook and carry it with them wherever they need. If you're finding it hard to write the whole description in here, you might want to consider that. Or you can even buy just index cards and do the same thing. And then you can buy a punch and punch your own pages and stuff and put them into your notebook, which would be a whole entire separate video. And if that's something you would want to see, put that in the comments and we'll work on it next. The other part is I have sections for the different groups. So I'm thinking this is like mercenary groups or any political circle or something. You can put all those important things in one place. So you have 3 cities. And then once you get past the cities, you have this section is for towns. So like minor villages, things that don't have a high population that maybe your players might run into or walk through and not spend a lot of time in, but you still have some of the same prompts here so that everything's kind of consistent. Next, we have NPCs, and I hope your players are not like my players and want to talk to everybody, because then this gets real beefy real fast. I put plenty of pages in here to start with. You have, very similar to that Pantheon setup, you have major NPCs and minor NPCs, and that is listed down here. When you buy an NPC pack, it comes with both types of pages. And I have it so you can build out your NPCs almost like you would a character, with alignment, background, their bonds, ideals, that kind of thing. Minor ones have the same prompts, but just smaller amounts of lines, because you really don't need to go into that much depth with every single NPC. Next, and this is probably my favorite portion of the notebook, is the story arc one. This is especially useful if you're building your own campaign and you need to keep track of just the general plot line, right? So here we have your big bad evil guy. What's his description? What's his motive? What are the steps of his plan? And that right there is like that has helped me, even when my players change everything. Having this plan and having an understanding of my bad guy's motive helps me help the bad guy pivot to make the story feel like my players are actually interacting with it and actually doing something to affect the storyline. Because if you are railroading your players, it's not as fun for them. You want your players to feel like they can influence the world around them, influence the story. So having especially the motive, but just a general sense of what they are trying to do in one place that I can reference over and over again has helped me, I feel like, make better campaign related decisions. The other thing I put on here is obviously villains allies. I feel like that one's kind of self-explanatory, but I like to kind of keep everything together. You have important NPCs. In here, I might put something like quest givers, so anybody who interacts with the players and how pushes them to interact with this bad guy or to figure out what this bad guy's plan is. I include a player hook section because sometimes you want to create a special hook so that your players are more invested in the story. My more recent homebrew, a lot of this has to do with items because in that world, artifacts are kind of rare. So a magic thing has turned one of my players into something else, and we will be exploring that, but it does somehow relate to the bad guy. That kind of stuff, I want to be able to be like, okay, don't forget that our player is interested in this bad guy because of this hook. And then I also have a section here, which I absolutely love, is the possible reactions to failure. I read a blog post way back when I was first trying to come up with my own first homebrew game. It really stuck out to me that you need to kind of figure out how someone would react to failing, because they are going to fail if your players are not TPK'd. But as long as your players are doing well in the campaign, they're going to keep winning. And so how does your villain react to that? And I think that also helps you keep the world fluid and make it feel like your players are actually influencing the world. On the back, we have some stuff that is more important to the actual adventure. How do you introduce this thing? Maybe it's they interact with a person. Or for me in particular, I like to write out an introduction to kind of just describe whatever the situation is that they're entering. So maybe it's like the very start of their campaign and they've been thrown into a dungeon. I would write that and kind of work on the introduction in that fashion. There's also a section for major clues and secrets, things I know I need to hint at to get them to stay on track. And same with major encounters. Now, obviously the big bad guy is there, but who else? What kind of minions are they going to encounter? And then climax, so what's the turning point? What's the point where the bad guy takes the plan a step further and everything looks bleak? What do they get at the end of this? Sure, maybe they save the world, but is that what all the players want to do? Are some of their characters more interested in just money, or are they looking for reputation? And then this section is for different events that happen throughout your campaign. In particular, I like to write down the trigger. So this is what I want to happen, and here's what triggers this to happen. Whether it's failure, whether it's the enemy getting a certain item, and then I write the details over here. And this just helps me keep track of the timeline in general. Sometimes I have this whole thing filled out. Sometimes I only have a few points filled out, and then I have to add it in as the campaign changes. But I think it gives me a good guideline when preparing for my next session. You get 3 of those sections in this notebook. You get a few more in the Lorekeeper version. Next, let's talk about session notes and prep. So like I said, when I prepare my notes or prepare for a session, I use this section to write key things down. Maybe it's particular roles or traps or encounters. I jot all that stuff down here. As we're doing the session, I use this section here to scribble notes, whether it's double check someone's HP was rolled correctly, or someone rolled a nat 20 on this. Maybe I need to raise the DC on certain things. I use this for almost a scratch pad throughout the session. I also have this section. This is for prep as well. This is just at a glance knowing what is in my session prep. Definitely need to drop a clue about the big bad guy, I would put it here. This is also why writing it out in this story section helps me, because then I know, okay, I haven't hinted at this goal, I should do that this session. Important NPCs, this just tells me which pages I need to pull out of my journal and put to the side so I have them ready in case they are encountered. Encounters, I do this for the monsters as well, so I do have those monster cards, but I also write it in here if it's something that like I know my players are going to interact with. And then I have the loot or treasure that they might encounter. And then at the end of the session, I write a summary in this box. Then I use this session summary to help me prep for the next session. I have a whole video on like note taking and the way I take notes, and you can watch that whole video. I just recently posted it, and I'll put a link on the screen somewhere. Finally, there's this, and it's the encounter section. So we have 2 dry erase sheets, and then on the left side is your player information. On the right side is your monster information. You have an initiative tracker, and then you have things like passive perception, stealth, insight. In particular, the passive perception, so maybe you actually surprise your players instead of being like, hey, what's your passive perception? Because that kind of ruins the entire surprise. On the right side, this gets a little squishy, so if you have a monster that is like, I don't know, a dragon and has a lot of lair actions or something, this is probably not going to work for you. I would recommend doing, again, I have another version of these cards that has just monster stats that you could also pop in and out, but just index cards or having the book ready. But I include a little bit of everything here, kind of cover your bases. This is really good for like minions or things that you know you're going to encounter a lot. Maybe it's a lot of bandits, maybe it's a lot of kobolds. The other thing I have here is a status tracker. In most cases, you don't just have one of each enemy. A lot of times you'll have like 5 goblins and then 1 hobgoblin, right? Or whatever, to make the encounter more balanced. When you do that, it's a little bit hard to track their HP. So what I tend to do is I write the name of the enemy here. I'll write Gob 1, Goblin 1, Goblin 2, Goblin 3, whatever. And then in this box is their current HP. I'll look over here. Their HP is, I don't know, off the top of my head, maybe 10. So I'll write the 10 here. And then as I get hit, I erase it and write 9, whatever. I also can keep track of their status here because I'm very bad at remembering when something has a status. So if I write it right here, it kind of helps me not have to think about it. That's what this bar is for. On the back of these encounter pages, you can actually draw out your entire battlefield, especially useful if you're doing theater of the mind and you want to just have a general understanding, or if you have to draw the map out on a dry erase sheet, you can really get detailed with it. And then I like to include a little thing about enemy motives as well as any treasure or loot they have. Sometimes I just pull this up off on the fly. They try to loot some kobolds. He'll have like, I don't know, a bag of bugs or something because that's what they eat, you know? So I'll write that in here so I remember that I did that once, and I try not to do it too many times. And then you have like other notes which you could put for traps or anything like that. But again, you have your motives. That kind of helps me figure out whether an enemy is going to retreat after losing half the battle or what. The cool thing again is that all of these pages can move, so you can take this page out when you no longer need these enemies and you have 3 more enemies here. Just keep those things in mind. This guy is got a little bit of everything, right? Also in the back, I include a few extra map pages, some of these like quad card pages, and then just lined notes. This guy has a little bit of everything. He's my baby. I also have to say he's a little beat up because this is my display version. This is the one I take to conventions and let people thumb through and touch. So like it also has like traveled several places. So he's a little beat up. This is the one that has a little bit of everything in it. And nowadays the back cover is no longer going to be this solid colored paper. It's a little thicker than like, I guess it would be like a cardstock. We're transitioning all of them to have chipboard covers. We find that helps them, one, in shipping, because we don't want your pages to get bent before you actually get to use it, but also it helps keep it more rigid when you throw it in a bag or you're taking it from place to place. It just travels a little better. Moving forward, all of these notebooks will have that until we get rid of all the notebooks with the back cover that's colored. Some of them will not have it. So the Dungeon Master has a little bit of everything, and it includes tab stickers. The other 3 are all versions of that. So the Battle Master is just the encounter sheets. That means you get the 2 dry erase sheets. You've got the player dashboard here, only one of them, and then the rest of them are monsters. This is really good if you make a lot of homebrew monsters, you just want to track initiative and encounters, or you just like creating mayhem with monsters. So that's what the Battle Master is for. The Scrivener, on the other hand, is just for notes. This one and the Lorekeeper underneath down here, these 2 are system agnostic. That means you can use this with Pathfinder, you could use this with Call of Cthulhu, you could use this with Candela Obscura, you could use this with the MCDM RPG. Like, you can do this and use these 2 notebooks with any system, because there's nothing in here that is specific to D&D. This Scrivener one, so we got that black cover, but is just for those note-taking sheets. So this is all the pages. All the pages are session notes. So you have the session recording on one side, you've got all the clues, a session summary on the other side. The Lorekeeper one, I've actually had some people, and maybe she's in the audience, I've actually had people who bought this book to help them with world building for writing novels. This is literally just the world building that you find in that first notebook. So this one has more regions, more shops and inns, more cities, more towns, the same amount of Pantheon, because I still feel like you don't need to hammer out that many gods to get the general lore down. There's also one world building section, but it is a little bit bigger, gives you just a little bit more room to write, and then a lot more timelines for that world. So this is like perfect for someone who's creating an entire world for their campaign, who's using this to keep track of details in the novel they're writing, and this works for literally any system ever.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to buy any of the products you saw in this video, please use the link in the description or go to cantripsmedia.com to find them. If you're looking for other ways to support me, you can join the Discord, you can subscribe, you can leave a comment. Like, all of these little things, even things that don't cost you any money, help me tremendously. So thank you so much for all of your support. The next one of these will be all about all the other products in the shop that are or are not D&D related. Some are, but I have Pathfinder notebooks, things like that. So we'll be doing that in the next iteration of this video. But next week we'll do something else for sure. So thank you so much for all your support. See you in the next one.